Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 13 of season 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Journey of the Iron Fist. And after the less than stellar second episode that we got last week, this is a nice return to form. This was actually, I thought, a pretty enjoyable episode, and certainly a very fun episode. Now, part of it is, of course, because Iron Fist is my favorite member of the Amazing Friends. I always thought that he's generally speaking the most mature of them in many ways. And, what can I say? I enjoy a good Iron Fist story, thanks to the writing of Matt Fraction, who did an absolutely stellar job of reviving Danny Rand as a character in the modern age. But anyway, getting into this. Now, this whole thing starts off with Spider-Man, in that sort of goofy daydream of his, wearing the black and yellow suit, which is not from Kill Bill. That's actually an outfit that Bruce Lee wore in Game of Death, and the Bride just wore a copy of it in Kill Bill. But no, that originally comes from a Bruce Lee movie. And that's fitting because this episode is really just kind of a Spider-Man in a kind of crazy 70s kung fu movie. And again, seeing as how Iron Fist comes from the whole kung fu craze of the 1970s, it's fitting that it is fitting that he's in. This is the kind of story that we get. Anyway, so just to kind of roll on with things. One thing that did kind of bother me at the beginning of this episode is that Spider-Man and Iron Fist are doing this whole kung fu training on what I guess is I can't talk tonight, on what seems to be the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay, first of all, how is this not going to completely weird out the people who are driving by? And I heard the story at one time about this guy who was actually doing Tai Chi in the park. And somebody called the cops on him because they thought there was like some dude having a mental problem. So really, don't you think that somebody would kind of call the cops if they see Spider-Man and some other dude doing what looks like might be training, might be fighting on the Brooklyn Bridge? I mean, just as a precaution. And doesn't somebody like monitor these bridges and stuff in New York City, to make sure that people don't go and jump off them? I mean, seriously, it's like somebody should have shown up to find out, like, hey, what's going on? And seriously, dude, why not do this at the gym at the Shield helicarrier? Or, someplace like where people aren't going to see you, like maybe on the roof of on the top of the Brooklyn Bridge. People are probably not going to notice you're up there. Yeah, but anyway. So we do get to see some pretty nice martial arts action, which I enjoyed, and we also get the origin of Iron Fist. The origin of Danny Rand. Were made aware of how he gained the Iron Fist by defeating the dragon from last season. Here we get to see more about who Danny was before then. We learn that he's the scion of Rand Industries. We learn more about his life in Kunlund. And honestly, that's all handled rather nicely. One thing that I liked when he said goodbye to Spider-Man on the bridge is he said namaste. Now, this is sort of a word and gesture that comes from India. And if you've ever seen like folks from that part of the world doing this, that's the namaste. And it sort of functions in some ways like aloha. It's a greeting, it's goodbye, it's good wishes and all this other stuff. So that's a nice touch. Iron Fist and Kunlun are all kind of this sort of essentially Chinese with some other Asian elements thrown in there, somewhat willy-nilly, but it makes sense that given his background, that's the sort of thing that under the circumstances Danny would say. As I said, it really is meant to be just a nice touch, and that's what it is. And speaking of nice touches, I have to say I really enjoyed their reinterpretation of Scorpion in this episode. Having him be a kung fu guy who can throw kunai faster than Spider-Man's spider senses can pick them up. That's pretty cool. It certainly beats the whole, dude who gained superhuman powers because J. Jonah Jameson paid him something or other so that he could destroy Spider-Man, which is actually Scorpion's origin in the comics. And then there was the heroic female secret agent Scorpion, who kind of fell off the radar, sadly, which is a shame. I actually quite enjoyed Carmilla Black. That was her name. She was a cool character, and heavily implied to actually be the daughter of Bruce Banner. No, seriously. Oh yeah, and her mom was like a major terrorist leader in Hydra. Aren't comics awesome sometimes? But anyway, speaking of Scorpion, he was voiced by the one and only Dante Bosco, who folks would probably know as Rufio from the movie Hook, but he's probably best known to folks as the voice of Prince Zuko over on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Zuko's descendant, his grandson Iroh from Avatar: The Legend of Korra. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that show coming back. And speaking of really nice guest stars, we have the one and only George Takei of Star Trek fame, also a fellow who guest starred on Avatar: The Last Airbender, doing the voice of the old Kung Fu Sensei dude. You know, it's always fun to see George Takei turn up in this stuff, and I love how he does really do a lot of voice work, which is really cool because he's very good at it. Honestly, the overall plot of this episode, I mean, it was perfectly serviceable, but, you know, it was very, very predictable. But predictable is not always bad, so long as you can make it enjoyable. There was a lot of the trademark Spider-Man humor, and just the whole kind of clash of throwing somebody like Spider-Man into the relatively quote-unquote serious world of a kung fu movie. You know, having Spider-Man run around through the mountains in that crazy getup, that was cool. That was good fun. Now, the whole thing with the illusions and what all happened there, and you know, the moral choices being what ultimately led Danny to be able to become the king of Kunlun. Again, you know, all totally predictable, but well executed and enjoyable. And I was genuinely surprised by, like, wait, he gets a second Iron Fist? That's cool. I didn't see that coming. I don't recall that ever being in the comics, but it's been a long time since I read any comics with Iron Fist in them, so. Anyway, also, this episode really does a nice job of just showcasing that Danny and Peter are good friends. You know, I mean, Danny just without even thinking about, basically says he leaves all of his worldly possessions to Peter, which may or may not have included all of Rand Industries. You know, that would be something that would be a little hard to prove in court, although I assume Danny could just sort of send some paperwork from Kunlun. I mean, they do have a jet sitting around. And I like how Peter is actually briefly tempted by that idea. You see, one thing that I think a lot of people forget about Spider-Man is that he's not Superman. He's not a saint. Peter does have those moments where he is tempted to do wrong, or where he even temporarily gives in to it for a little bit. There was an when we were I saw somebody talking about this online. They gave an example from the '60s comics where Flash Thompson, for whatever reason, was running around in a Spider-Man costume and was captured by Doctor Doom. And Peter was like, "Well, ha ha ha! You know, Flash is going to get what he deserves, and he's going to be out of my life. This is great." And then, you know, for just a second there, he's the biggest jerk in the world. Then he realized, like, what am I thinking? I can't let Doctor Doom kill Flash. As much, even though I hate him because he's a big jerk who makes my life miserable, I have to go and save Flash. And it is that choice, of course, that makes Spider-Man a hero. But I like that he does have those moments where he hesitates, where he kind of gives into his darker impulses for a while. And of course, there are more than a few episodes where he full out gives into them. My favorite example is a comic from I guess it was about 1973, 1974 that I read one time. Peter, and it really starts off with Peter literally walking through the streets of New York, basically doing the stride of pride because he tagged Betty Brant the night before, even though she was still married at the time. Now, to be completely fair, she was full on officially separated from her husband at the time, but still, I mean, to read that scene, it's just like Peter comes across like just such a dickweed. It's actually kind of hilarious in a funny sort of way. But anyway, as I said, overall, this is a somewhat predictable but still very entertaining episode. It's a real return to form for the show after the ridiculousness of episode 12 of Itsy Bitsy Spider-Man. I never want to watch that episode again for the rest of my life. Anyway, guys, that's everything that I have for you this time around. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.